As I said at the top of the show, we are exposing hypocrisy today because there's been a lot happening in the last few weeks. A massive pile-on has been brought on against me due to some historical information. Now, I won't go into detail about what that information is because as far as I'm concerned, it's not something that should be broadcast on the radio. But it stems from our former associate deciding how best to get back at us for exposing his lies, his scam, all of that. I am talking, of course, of Andrew Robert Watson, a.k.a. Robbie Cohen, the self-proclaimed owner of Stereo 10 and a so-called media company, Panthers Lair Productions Australia, which, from what I've seen in recent weeks, doesn't actually do any media production. It's more like a slag-off page. And that's basically all it's used for. It's no wonder there's only like 23 followers on the whole thing. It's just a bunch of crap, basically. But this links in to a couple of other people. Now, as many of our regular listeners will know, I've had a serial stalker for about 2.5 years, and his name is John Douglas Griffin. And recently, he was convicted of that crime. In fact, the prosecution upgraded the charges from misuse of a carriage service, 474.17 on the Commonwealth Criminal Code. They upgraded them to charges under Queensland's stalking laws. Now, I'm yet to find out exactly what the sentencing was, but yeah, the conviction was confirmed. I have it direct from my source at Queensland Police, and I'm waiting to find out more information about that. But you may remember earlier this year, I had a civil case going as well as the what became the criminal case when Mr. Griffin was charged. I had a civil case going and I had two witnesses, one by the name of Tanya Roy and the other by the name of Reese Stevenson. Now, Tanya Roy runs a website called Offenders Exposed, and she's very proud of her advocacy work and you know, exposing all these dangerous people and you know all this different stuff, right? Now, you know, she's very picky with. She's very selective with who she picks for this sort of stuff. Now, she only sources her information mostly from media articles, and we all know how reliable those newspaper websites are, don't we, of actually telling the full story. But, once again, the full story doesn't get told, and through its so-called advocacy, it causes vigilantism, and innocent people, including family members and friends, get targeted by these online keyboard warriors who want to make a name for themselves. Now, Tanya Roy, I did an interview with Tanya back in earlier this year, in fact, and she discussed her encounters, her original encounter with John Griffin back in 2020 when she first did an interview with him for promoting her, at the time it was just the Facebook page of Offenders Exposed. She hadn't launched the website at that point, and this is some of what she had to say from that very long interview.
Since John discovered that I was involved in the civil proceedings against him, I became a target, and I quite often found my name mentioned in the breaking news section of his website, and apparently he was doing numerous investigations against me and was going to reveal information to the public which wasn't true. I got tired of this because he was trying to destroy my reputation. I have a Facebook page and a website called Offenders Exposed, and I expose domestic violence offenders, child abusers and sex offenders. And John was tarnishing my reputation by saying that I was ripping people off, I was a con artist, etc., etc. But it wasn't just me that he was targeting. There were other people that he was targeting as well, and I really got sick of it. So around the 27th of December last year, I finally had enough, and I sent John an email asking him to please stop it. He not only harasses people who have autism, he harasses people who are unemployed, he harasses people with disabilities, and I've just been diagnosed with cancer, so he's been harassing me as well. So I tried to plead to any sense of humanity that man may have, with the hope that he would stop his harassment, and he didn't. In actual fact, about 1:50 a.m. on the 28th of December, I received my first email from him in reply to the original one that I sent him. and basically he started posing me and harassing me. He's under the impression that I have harassed his mother, which is a lie. So he's constantly had a go at me about his mother. Now, the first email came through at 10 to 2 in the morning. One of the final emails I got was around 4:56 p.m. on the 28th. One of the emails, and I'll say this word for word, is the cancer-ridden idiot still talking. Some of the emails that I received from John mentioned that he hopes I die in pain, that Aboriginal law will get me, that the elders up north have cast a spell on me, so forth and so forth. This went on. I got close to 40, maybe 50 emails from him in that period of time.
Just in that period of time? Like that many emails?
10 to 2 in the morning until around 4:56 that day on the 28th.
And bear in mind, this is right around Christmas. Like everyone's, like the week between Christmas and New Year, everyone should be just enjoying themselves and relaxing. Meanwhile, he's sitting up to all hours emailing you this sort of crap.
Oh, he did wish me a Merry Christmas. He said, "Merry Christmas, whore."
Oh. Charming.
So yeah, he called my whole family drug dealers. He's going to expose me on national TV for I don't know what. He claims that I've been drink driving around Brisbane area during COVID lockdowns, etc. I don't drink and I don't drive around the areas during the lockdown. But it goes on and on and on. He's got these delusions in his head. He plays them out in his head. I think that he believes that they're true, and he uses his radio station and his position on the radio station to voice his delusions and harass people.
Yeah, and does it very, very frequently. Now, that's very important. The way she's talking about John Douglas Griffin there, pay very close attention to that. There's more audio from that interview that I did with Tanya earlier this year. Have a listen to this.
I actually got a phone call from the police one day, Craig. Yes, it was quite interesting, actually. John Griffin claimed that I was harassing him, and he went into a police station in tears, crying to the police officers. Tanya's harassing me, Tanya's harassing me. She's sending people to my house. The police rang and asked me what was going on. So once I explained to them exactly what was going on and that no, I haven't sent anybody to his house. In actual fact, my son knocked on the door, spoke to his mother in an attempt to get John to take the stuff down that was put up on the website. By the time I'd finished talking to the police officer, he hung up the phone. He was quite happy with what I'd had to say. I find it quite bizarre that John, of all people, after what he's been doing to people for so many years, would have the nerve to go into a police station in tears.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful? You know, and we know that he's, as we said, he has been convicted of stalking. We also know, incidentally, that he's been facing court in Cairns for allegations, charges relating to an alleged assault of a former partner, as well as stalking this former partner at their workplace and at their home, and stalking their family members, and all alleged at this point, because the case is still pending in the magistrates' court in Cairns, as I understand. We do know that he has another call-over court date scheduled on the 1st of February in Cairns. According to the records, he's not required to appear. I'd love to know how he gets out of having to appear in these cases. Anyway, so that's the basic background of that. We're going to get back to more of that, and we're going to bring in John's former producer, Rhys Stevenson, because he has a lot of explaining to do as well. But we will get to that. It's all coming. For the moment, we are exposing hypocrites and double standards. And we mentioned in the last talk break, we played you some samples of an interview that I did with a Miss Tanya Roy back earlier this year. Now, I also mentioned Rhys Stevenson. Now, Rhys Stevenson is Mr. John Griffin's former producer. He quit back at the end of January 2021. And subsequently went and formed his own radio station, the WA Radio Network, which he's been doing very, very well for himself with. Now, recently, because of the events that came to light that have caused this discussion in the first place, Mr. Stevenson declined to be speaking with me and everything, and told me not to take it personally. Like what other way can I take it? But anyway, so he's joined in on the pylon as well because he thinks he's all tough and that. He's already getting himself into a bit of hot water for some of the people he's gone after in Western Australia, not the least of which is former One Nation candidate Aaron Malloy, and apparently there's a possibility of some legal action that could be coming with that, but that's a side issue. But back at around the same time that I did my interview with Tanya here on VFE Variety, we did a three-way chat on Reese's show, The Jury, on WA Radio Network. This is just a piece from that particular show.
Now we heard from Dave in his interview about that he target his family, his kids, and that he's also done that with you as well. He's gone after your wife, and the horrible things he said about your wife is one of the things that we know. Well, I know what he was like because actually, for all those out there in listening to this now, I used to work for the man before I started up WA Radio Network. I used to work for him, and like basically, what you call work is I actually was working 24/7, non-stop. He would call me. He would make sure I did everything, and in the end, if I didn't do it, I was fairly abused by him just as much. So I know exactly where Craig's coming from because I was there when it all started with Craig. And some of the things he would do, he would actually make me go after you and actually made me be nasty to you, which later on I apologised for it. And that some of the things that was said in the comments that John made is he referred to your wife as having a straw stuck up her nose. Now, how did it make you feel?
That I was livid. I was livid because it's one thing to go after a man. I'm old school, and if you want to come after me. That's fine. I can take it, and I'll give as good as I get. But you don't come after a man's family, and back in the day, we all know stories of the Wild West and, how these matters were dealt with in the past. Of course, you can't do that now. There's this thing called the law that stops you from doing that.
We're going to bring in Tanya Roy. Now, Tanya Roy is from Offender Expose. Good afternoon, Tanya. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Reese. How are you?
Not too bad. Now, you once did an interview with this man on his radio show, and you discovered there was absolutely nothing wrong with him until he basically his behaviours started to change when he decided to take you out on a night out on the Gold Coast. Tell us about that.
He invited me to a weekend on the Gold Coast. He told me that we were going to do a live show. He wanted me to co-host a show on the Gold Coast. So I came home and I discussed it with my children. They said, "Go, Mum, you never go anywhere." So I drove John to the Gold Coast. His ex-partner's mother joined us at the apartments. From the moment she turned up, he was criticising her. He was picking on her. He was belittling her. This went on all night, discussing inappropriate things with her about her partner. She went to bed early. Not long after that, I went to bed early. Went to bed after her. We woke up the next morning and discovered that John had booked a lunch cruise for us to go to on the Gold Coast. So we went on that. And from the moment we got on the boat, he started embarrassing this poor woman and saying that her teeth look bad, but she's not a junkie. That's from chemotherapy. Not necessary. And from the whole time we were on the boat, he just humiliated her. We got in the Uber and went back to the apartment. This poor woman was too frightened to go back into the apartment. She was too upset, and she wanted to continue to go home. I asked if she wanted me to get her stuff out of the apartment. She said no, and she continued home in the Uber. So I went up to the apartment, and then John decided that I was going to become his target. We went down to the pool. I'd bought my own beers. I went down, had a beer at the pool, went back upstairs and decided it was time for me to order some tea. He wouldn't let me order tea. He kept harassing me. Apparently I was only allowed one meal a day. I asked him to please leave me alone. He continued to harass me. He could see that I was getting upset. I went and locked myself in the room to try and calm down. I came out. He continued to get at me and at me and at me. I went back into the room. I came out and he was on the phone to one of his friends. And I've been informed it was Laura Domenico. And he put that on video chat and shoved that phone in my face and filmed everything that I did and every movement I made, while he continued to belittle me and lie to Laura about the events that were going on. I packed my belongings. I left him on the Gold Coast. I came home and I had nothing to do with that man after that, until you interviewed me, Reese, when I launched my website.
Oh, and
he didn't like that.
And that went down really a shame, because after we did the interview, we got harassed multiple times from Mr. Griffin himself. And the thing is, he went on to continue targeting you to the point. Now, you've been diagnosed with cancer, and he actually targeted your cancer and made basically a comment about it. How did that make you feel?
Oh, several comments. I was appalled, to be honest. I was disgusted that anybody would say those things to somebody, and not necessarily because it was said to me, but that he would say that to anybody that had an illness, let alone a type of cancer. He was hoping that I would die a painful death. I mean, the list went on. The horrible things that he said, it just went on and on. He sent me an email. He started emailing me at 10 to 2 in the morning on the 28th of December. Is the cancer-ridden, I think it was a cancer-ridden mole still talking. He called me a whore. He called me a drug addict. He said my whole family are drug dealers. The list went on.
And
a racist. Yes, I'm a racist as well.
Yeah. So it's kind of a recap of some of the stuff that we covered in our interview that I did with Tanya as well, but paid close attention to all that information about the infamous trip to the Gold Coast, because that information was in the affidavit, the sworn affidavit that Ms. Roy submitted as part of her taking part to be a witness in my civil case against Mr. John Griffin. And I still have the document, and at some point we will make sure it's scanned and it will be published, and a lot more is going to come out of this in 2023, because we have a new podcast starting that will be exclusive to the VFE Network website, and we'll tell you more about that in the new year. It is coming and it's going to be explosive. We will check the latest weather around Australia very, very soon. But I want to send out a bit of a shout out, a bit of a dedication, because we've just recently been informed that Miss Tanya Roy is listening into the show, along with many, many others. And I'm here to say I'm glad you're listening. I'm glad you're paying attention. Stick around, because it gets better in the second hour, because we expose the full hypocrisy of you and your little minions. The timing of Ms. Roy contacting me was absolutely hilarious, and I just want to read you one of the emails that she sent me just this afternoon. This is going to be really, really good. Let me see, where is it? There it goes. Sent at 10 to 2. I think it's really rude that you interrupt someone on a live radio show, but anyway. But she says, and I quote, "I am going to finish you today. You wait and see. You fell for the bait, you moron." Well, no, Ms. Roy, you're the moron and you're the hypocrite. And very soon, we're going to find out why. 13 after 2 here in beautiful Brisbane. Still a warm one outside, and possibility of showers later this afternoon. Looks like it's going to be a wet start to the new year as well. Now, here on the show today, we are covering exposing hypocrites, basically. We also had some suggestions for new hobbies for online trolls. You may not have caught the one I said at the start of the show. I had a couple of suggestions, but unfortunately our technical equipment was playing up a little bit, so I'll rerun them again. They can always get into vaping. They can start with their car's exhaust pipe. then they can also get ready for the Olympics, the Brisbane Olympics in 2032. It's going to be a massive event here in Queensland, and they can get into the diving, start practicing on the Story Bridge and work their way up to the rooftop of Q1 on the Gold Coast. That's a really good start, and a great new hobby for online trolls who have nothing better in their pathetic lives than to pile on to people that are just minding their own business and doing their own thing. I mean, yeah, look, we expose people. We expose people. We call out bullies. We call out frauds. We call out scam artists. We call out stalkers. We call out anyone that we feel fits the bill. And that's exactly what we're going to do. To recap what we've covered in the last hour, if you've just joined us, we still want your suggestions for new hobbies for online trolls. Hit the contact tab at our website, vfenetwork.com, or text or call 0406 193 226. But to recap in the last hour, and we've been talking a lot about Tanya Roy. Now, Tanya Roy is a self-proclaimed advocate for the community. She likes to think that she's saving people with her Offenders Exposed website. The truth of the matter is she actually promotes vigilantism and gets very, very upset when she's challenged, and she's certainly been getting very, very upset this afternoon. But to recap, now, she talked about our serial stalker John Griffin, who we had charged and convicted of stalking. Let's be very, very clear of this. He was charged and convicted. Actually, he was charged with misuse of a carriage service, and the prosecution upgraded the charges to stalking when they got the report from the investigating officers, because there was so much material, and I didn't even give them all the evidence. I still had stacks more. There is still stacks more, and you'll probably hear it on the podcast next year, exclusive to VFEnetwork.com. We will tell you more about that in the new year, though. But back to Tanya. Now, she made this big deal about how she was harassed by John. She did the trip to the Gold Coast, the infamous trip where he belittled her. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but under the current legislation in this state, that's a form of domestic violence. Now, that being the case, it's very, very interesting that another little piece of audio that we're going to play very shortly. But before we get there, we've got to go back to... we played some of the audio early in the show of myself, Rhys Stevenson, John's former producer from the WA Radio Network, and Tanya Roy appearing on his show, on Rhys's show, The Jury. And she talked about the Gold Coast trip, and she talked about all that stuff. Well, someone was listening into that show and decided that they were going to reach out. I am talking about the one and only Andrew Robert Watson, also known as Robbie Cohen, the man behind Stereo 10 and that scam media production company, Panthers Lair Productions Australia. Now, the reason why he comes up is because, and we exposed some of this a couple of months back, actually, which is a part of the reason why he's really pissed at us. And if you go to our website on our on-demand page at vfenetwork.com, you can find it. It's the 6th of October, 2022. There's two shows, one that we did live and another that we produced originally for Mixcloud, and it's the shows that got our Mixcloud channel cancelled after Mr. Watson decided to have a little bit of a sook to the people at Mixcloud. So we've still got it up on the website. You can still go and listen to it and recap there. That's why we're not playing too much of the same material we played on that show. But Mr. Watson decided to reach out through a so-called friend, and I still believe it's actually an alternate personality, Danielle Wilson, and reached out to not only Mr. Stevenson, but reached out to Ms. Roy. And I knew about this like as soon as the messages were sent. Ms. Roy and Mr. Stevenson contacted me straight away, and the first thing I said to them is, by all means, if you want to take the call, if you want to talk to him. Just make sure you record it, and we have the audio. Now, on that show from back in October, we played a lot of the stuff from the call between Mr. Watson and Mr. Stevenson. One example of witness tampering. This is the other, and we've never released this audio before. Mr. Watson, aka Mr. Cohen, talking to Ms. Roy during a phone call in which he was repeatedly reminded she was a witness in a civil court case, and what he was doing was witness tampering. And the call runs for about 50 minutes. We're not going to play that much of it now. We're just going to give you a little taste.
I know that this is going to court because John has put it all over I know that this is going to court because John has put it all over his website and has mentioned it on numerous radio announcements that he's been doing when he's been slandering myself and everybody else.
Yeah.
And I also know that you are now discussing information relating to a case that is still having to go through court that is between you and Craig. And you also know that John is involved in 2 cases relating to Craig, and you're known to be aligned with John, so I can't work out what it is you expect to get from me with this phone call.
No, okay. I'm just letting you know, I'm not aligned with John.
Well,
and I've never been aligned with John. Okay, I don't know what John's problem is, and you guys have obviously copped a lot of stuff from John, and I'm very, apologetic that you guys have had to...
You don't need to apologise if you have nothing to do with it.
No, but what I'm saying is you don't deserve to have put up with the crap that you've put up with.
You're damn right I don't. You're damn right.
I have no interest in dealing with John. Let me tell you that John only attacked Stereo 10, which is my organisation, because he thought it belonged to Craig, right? That's the only reason. And when him and Craig were having this very public spat and very public fight, all because of something that John said on his radio show about some guy down in Victoria, all of a sudden Craig decided to get a bee in his bonnet about it, and he decided to unleash this dedicated campaign of crap against John. Craig was the one that instigated everything that led John to become the 10 times nastier person that he already was.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. I'm going to disagree with you on that and I'll tell you why I disagree with you on that. I've seen John in action against women, okay? I've seen him in action unprovoked. Myself has become a target of John's unprovoked. All I did was a radio interview with Reese, and he unleashed on me, and he has done so for months. I'm entitled to do a radio interview with whoever I goddamn please. Okay, so he does not need any provocation whatsoever. John?
Maybe not.
No, John is an asshole. He's a pig of a person. But
Craig is also exactly the same, and Craig is also a narcissistic sociopath that is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
But what you understand? Do you understand this? Hang on. Do you understand?
When I came back from my medical leave because I was dealing with both physical and mental illness, where I nearly lost my life, I came back to my Stereo 10 page to find not only had Craig manipulatively tried to take over the entire thing and claim it as his own, which is what he was planning to do from the moment that he joined my organisation. But when I finally wrestled back control of my Facebook page that he also tried to take over and spreading lies about me to all the fans, I then found all the emails that Craig had initiated in sending to John when he decided to get a bee in his bonnet over what John had said on his radio show. Now, if a person says something on their radio show that you don't like, most normal people go, I don't like what he said, I'm not listening to that bloke.
Okay, but hang on, Robbie.
Craig decided to attack him, and he attacked him for so long and so hardcore, it turned John from the once 9 times out of 10 arsehole, turned him into an arsehole times 1,000.
You cannot I don't agree with that. You cannot say that Craig is responsible for John being who John is.
I've got the evidence and the police.
No.
To prove
Craig should not be held responsible for how John chooses to react. Okay, John reacts because that's who John is, right? Okay. But again, what has this got to do with me?
His own actions.
But what does this have to do with me?
What I'm saying is, all I'm trying to warn you guys about is don't sit there and think that John is the only person that's responsible for all of this and that Craig is this, wonderful, trustworthy guy, because he's not.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Craig's done nothing wrong by me. In actual fact, Craig warned me about John, and I should have listened to him. John has done wrong by not only myself, but my family.
Lots of people.
Right? Okay. Now, John is in my targets. Right?
That's fine.
Okay. Whereas Craig has done nothing. And you also probably are aware that I'm also a witness against John in a court case that is pending. And I will stand up in any court of law and I will call him out for the pig of a person that he is.
Oh, yes. And, you said all of that stuff and you absolutely believed it at the time, didn't you, Miss Roy? Yes, absolutely. Yes, John is a pig. John is an abuser of women. John is a predator. An absolute predator. He's facing charges at the moment in court, not just from the charges I brought against him, but he's got charges based on allegations of assaulting a former partner, stalking a former partner at their home and workplace, stalking their family, all sorts of allegations that come out of that, and he's still got court dates pending up in Cairns that he's trying to escape from. He's probably run back to Mummy to get some protection, not that she can do much. I mean, Australian Border Force doesn't really have much to do with that sort of thing. But it's interesting what is said there about John. Is very, very interesting about what is said there about John, because Mr. Watson, after I exposed him 2 months ago, it took him 2 months to come up with a response, and he had to do some digging. So he dug back, and I know how he got the information. I know how he would have gotten the clue for the information, because he's already taken me to court once. He's taking me to court again, only this time I have all the evidence all ready to go of 2.5 years of him instigating any response that I made via voicemail, email, or any other form. And it will all be coming out in court, and a few people should be looking out for subpoenas. Now, getting back to Tanya Roy and John Griffin. So, if you've listened to all the audio we played this afternoon, Tanya Roy thinks John Griffin is an absolute pig. She thinks he's an absolute arsehole. So it was with some surprise that on the 15th of December this year, for the first time on the air, certainly that I know of, in 6 months, because he pretty much went into hiding and didn't raise his head anywhere, John Griffin went back live on air on his sorry excuse for a radio station. And guess who was one of his guests?
As I promised, I got a special guest on the phone, and now I've got a few people who are coming up on the show today, and they're all my favourite people, and this lady is definitely one of them. I had the great pleasure of going down the Gold Coast, and we had to go on a boat. Well, we didn't have to, we did, and nearly got knocked out by the bridge thing, and everybody had to duck. And also, she runs one of the best pages on Facebook, so go check it out. Offenders Exposed, the owner and proprietor. Tanya, how are you?
Hi, John. How are you? I'm good, thank you.
I'm very well. How have you been?
Very good, thank you.
Now, this website, as you said, offendersexposed.com.au, now you can go there and type in, say, Brisbane, Ennerley, and all those sort of suburbs?
Yeah, what you can do is you can type in a name. If you're not sure of a surname, you can type in a first name, and anybody I have listed in that specific area will come up. You can type in a suburb, and you can put in a radius. So, for example, you can put Annerley and 10 Ks, and anybody in that area will come up. And the offenders that will come up have been convicted of domestic violence offences, child abuse offences, or sex offences.
Now, do you get a lot of threats during your job?
Yes. Not as often as you would think. I get more support than anything, but I've recently exposed an offender who's not too happy about it, and I've been receiving some threats and some emails and thinks he's going to expose me on, and things like that, but there's nothing to find. I'm not too concerned. People like that are easy to deal with. After doing this for 8 years, if I couldn't handle the threats, I wouldn't be doing my job.
You have cancer at the moment, which I'm very sad and sorry to hear. And how's that going?
Okay, well, firstly, I'd like to do a huge shout out to the Princess Alexandra Hospital. They have been fantastic. They've been taking good care of me. I was due to do 6 courses of chemotherapy, but during the process I got struck down with COVID. So that sort of delayed the process for a little while. I've got one more round of chemo to go, and hopefully we'll be all good next year. What I've actually got is chronic lymphocytic leukemia. So it's a blood cancer, but I'm being very well looked after, and the hospital has been fantastic.
And can you die from that or no?
No. But what has happened is that originally they thought it'd be a number of years before I would need treatment, but I actually showed symptoms really quickly, and my lymph nodes were all flaring up. My armpit flared up to about 5 centimetres. So they did biopsies. They thought I had breast cancer at one stage, and they ruled that out. They did biopsies and decided that chemo was the best course of treatment.
Oh, bleeding hearts of the world unite. Now, remember that this is the same man. The man she is talking to right there, John Douglas Griffin, is the man she called an absolute pig, that is an abuser of women, that is a stalker, that is a harasser, that is the same man that sent her an email on the 28th of December 2021 that read, "Is the cancer-ridden idiot still talking?" And yet she's happily appearing on his radio show now, and apparently it's all good again. Tanya Roy, do you know what I call that from where we call that where I come from? We call that hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. You're a hypocrite. And I just showed that you are a total hypocrite. I wonder if your followers would accept that you just pick and choose who you support. You know this man is a predator. You've been abused by him. You've copped shit from him. You have been a target of him. And yet you still appeared on your on his radio show. But you went after me. I made references to Rhys Stevenson before. Rhys Stevenson was John Griffin's former producer. He's now gone on and formed his own radio network, the WA Radio Network, over there in Western Australia. Doing very well for himself. I got a big sponsorship deal with Atrium Hotel in Mandurah for about $4,000 for the year, I believe the figure is. But I wonder if they'd be very, very happy with some of the audio. And we've already exposed some of this audio as well, like some of the stuff that he did while he was working for John. But here's the interesting thing. After he left in the end of January of 2021, John mercilessly attacked him. I've got to get my positioning right. He mercilessly attacked him because of his autism and because of his disability and the way he presents himself on air. Of course, he also continued to keep going after me. This little piece comes from the 26th of February, 2021. Have a listen to this.
I'm sure it's definitely wine time for a few mummies out there who want to wine right now after dealing with the kids all week. It is Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the show. John Griffin here with you live in the afternoons. Now, I heard in that song where Becky Cole said, take your medication. Now, we got a few, as everybody knows, we got the serial pest over there in Enderley, Craig Van Oosten from Enderley in Franklin Street. We all know about him. He likes to stalk women and harass women and stalk people's homes and all this crap. Now, they're all on the disability pension, by the way. So they haven't got a job in their life. They've never had a job in their real lives, and they've never ever worked for a real radio station. Now, I've worked at many radio stations all across Australia, and I've worked with television stations and production houses all around Australia, and these morons want to copy all of my ideas and take every story that I do. They want to go and run with that story, but I've noticed one story they're not touching, which is the Alice Springs story. And why is that? Because they're not smart enough. Half the problem is they don't even know how to talk properly. Like Craig Van Oosten, if you were to listen to his show, right, he sounds like this. You ready? Hi, this is Craig Van Oosten. Welcome to the show. Now, I don't know what you understand from any of that, but that's how they talk. And then you got Rhys, who goes like this. and then my name's Ring, and my name's Ring, and I try and do radio, and that's how they talk. Now, last time I looked at radio stations and the way I got a job, no, you weren't allowed to talk anything like that, I'm sure. So anybody who wants to go listen to retards on radio, go for it. But at this station, we don't deal with it, and nor will we. And there's a big lawsuit coming their way anyway. So let them go. Let them do whatever they need to do. Have their little dreams on their little, what's it called, disability pension. Oh, wow. And every time, by the way, when I say people on the disability pension, I'm not talking about everybody, by the way, so don't send me emails saying, oh, you hate everybody on the disability pension, because I don't. I think a lot of people deserve it. They can't go to work. They can't because they've been affected by the army or they've been affected by a wheelchair or something like that. But these blokes who sit there when they've got I can't say that word on radio, but half a stuffed brain, and they just run the system. And this is exactly what these two people are doing. They want the violin out. I don't have a violin sound effect right now, but they want the violin out and everybody to feel sorry for them. Well, number one, I don't, and neither does the rest of the public. And you're delusional if you think you've even got 2 listeners, you morons. So keep going, keep doing what you need to do. And if you need to copy anything that I do, continue to copy it. But you don't want to touch any of the Aboriginal stories, I notice. So all the other stories I do, you want to copy. Like, for example, we had Cass on the show. She had to do a lung transplant. Craig Van Oosten over there in Enderley had to go and harass that family and carry on. Then we had a fire victim not long ago down there in Tassie. Craig Van Oosten has to run over there and try and do that story as well. Because, number one, he's on the disability pension. I think they're just bored. They must be just bored people sitting on the dole, got nothing better to do than harass people who are going through lung transplants, lost their houses through fires. They should be ashamed of themselves. This is disgusting what they're doing. Absolutely disgusting what they are doing.
Yeah, that's really funny coming from a man who allegedly had his mummy paying his rent up in Cairns, up at the apartment complex up there, and pretty much freeloaded off his mother before he even moved to Cairns, when he was still living out at Camira. Yes, Crystal Court, Camira. Yeah, I won't give you the number, but yeah, Crystal Court, Camira. So, John, you were perfectly happy to bag out myself. Well, I mean, you always were bagging out me, but you were happy to bag out Reese something fierce. Every chance you got, you'd email him, you'd call him, you'd abuse him, you'd threaten him. You did all of this stuff. It's well documented. There's a mountain of other audio I could play that would absolutely prove that. There's a lot of other screenshots that I have that would absolutely prove that. And yet, Mr. Stevenson, shortly after deciding he didn't want to talk to me anymore because of the information. And I should point out too that when the information was made public regarding myself and historical stuff, I actually went to Mr. Stevenson first. I gave him the heads up that it was out there, and I told my story to him and I explained it. I said, look, this is what the situation is, and he was fine with this, and I'm not going to get involved. And then a couple of days later, I get a message saying, oh, don't take it personally, but I'm going to have to unfriend you. I have to protect my brand, which I assume was basically under direct orders from Miss Roy. But obviously, Mr. Stevenson takes orders from other people too, because once again, the 15th of December this year, Mr. Griffin returned to the airwaves, and guess who was on his show?
Reese is over there from the WA Radio Network. How are you going, Reese?
I'm very well, John. Great to have a conversation with you on a lovely Thursday.
Oh, it's amazing. My Christmases are just getting better. The Christmas presents just keep coming and coming. Now, as you know, I did some big stories, and I sometimes have serial pests and those sort of people at the radio station. How do you deal with those sort of people?
I name and shame them.
Yeah. But do they try and take you to court like they do with me?
I'm still waiting. Earlier on in this year, I was threatened with legal documents from someone from WA. I'm still waiting for that document. Because
they know it costs too much money to bother us radio announcers, and at the end of the day, it's all factual information, and it's not Channel 9. We tell the truth.
Well, I'm not like the ABC or anything like that, Channel 7 or anything like that. I'm an individual media. And I tell it as I see it. And if they don't like it, then so what?
And you know what? As I say, there's 5 million other radio stations you can listen to who don't bother listening to me, but still I get plenty of listeners, so I don't really care.
Yeah, you get plenty of listeners. You haven't been on air in 6 months, you idiot. But, and Reese is all confident now, and apparently, all is forgiven. All is suddenly forgiven. Now, bear in mind, John Douglas Griffin is a convicted stalker. He is still facing charges for allegations of assault of a former partner, i.e. domestic violence. We know he likes to abuse women. Tanya Roy has told us that on numerous occasions, and we have the audio to prove it. But suddenly, it's okay to be all close with John Griffin again. And it all stems back to Mr. Andrew Robert Watson. The four of them are definitely communicating. They're definitely in some form of collusion. And now we have exposed them as the hypocrites and liars they are. There will be more coming in the new year. We will make it part of our new podcast. We will give you more details about that in the new year. It will be exclusive to VFEnetwork.com. We're not going to run the risk of it being pulled down from any other platform. We're going to put it straight on our website, and it will be explosive. We will be targeting media in all forms, and this will be the biggest one that we cover when we start the podcast early in 2023. We really exhausted ourselves. I actually had to change up the playlist to be able to fit all of that audio that we put in there. But as far as I'm concerned, that audio needed to be played. Because if people want to go around exposing others, they have to be prepared for scrutiny themselves. And if you're proving hypocrisy, you need to get the info out there. And as I say, Tanya Roy is the biggest hypocrite I have ever met in my life. Absolutely, without a doubt, the biggest hypocrite I have met in my life. And she does not like being challenged in any way, shape or form. But you know what? I have come up against bullies all my life. Your 8 years doing your crap, I'll see your 8 years and raise you 30 years in media come February next year. I have way more runs on the board than you. I know what I'm doing, and I know that what you're doing is not right, because all you do is support vigilantism. Incidentally, I want to send out a special cheerio to a good mate of mine, Nick, down there in New South Wales, who has copped a lot. As I said earlier, my family and friends have copped a lot of abuse from this pylon caused by this information that has come out. And Nick has been one of the innocent victims in all of this. And I know I've said this to him privately, but I want to say a heartfelt apology live on the air here at VFEHQ, because, mate, you didn't need to cop what you've copped. And it invaded his personal space. It invaded his personal life. It didn't just come from, seeing, him commenting on my stuff on my personal page. People went after him in groups. People have gone after him and he's not the only one. He's absolutely not the only one. And so I want to send a heartfelt apology, because, mate, you didn't deserve any of that. People, as I've said constantly, and I said earlier in audio that I played earlier on, if people want to come after me, I'm a man. I'm thick-skinned. I can take it. You want to come after me, come after me. But you go after my family or my friends, and that changes the ball game. And if you think I can be vicious just when you come after me, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Greg V's Lunchtime Live.
You can't shut me up, and you won't shut me down.
On VFE Variety.